The Irish Government has now published the text of its Gender Pay Gap Information Bill, which introduces into Irish law for the first time mandatory gender pay gap reporting obligations for Irish employers. While the precise timeframe of when this may or may not become law is currently unclear, it's on the government's priority list for legislative action, so we anticipate it'll come into law towards the end of this year, 2019. With this in mind, A&L Goodbody have been working with Gapsquare, a UK-based software company that specialises in processing and analysing payroll data, in an effort to assist our Irish clients in preparing for gender pay gap reporting. I'm joined now by Webb, who's VP of Partnership and Growth of Gapsquare. So in simple terms, Gapsquare will crunch the numbers and A&L Goodbody will advise on the input, the output, and what measures employers could take to narrow any identified gap. So Sian, can you explain what makes this dual offering key for Irish businesses who might want to get a proactive step ahead in understanding their gender pay gap?
Well, what's really interesting is the input, the advice that A&L Goodbody can give to employers about what goes in and out really impacts the output. So it's really important that you understand the root causes and the contribution that that makes to your overall gender pay gap. That helps you, I think, create much better short-term and long-term action planning. And overall, what this really does is you really start thinking about the communication then of what your gender pay gap looks like, the impact that that knock-on effect has on recruitment and retention of staff, and your overall perception around what are you doing to tackle equality and diversity across your organisation.
So in your view, what benefits does this combined approach of data analytics and legal advice have for employers?
So I think what's key is the devil's in the detail and actually going into the detail of what's driving your gender pay gap. We have this phrase at Gapsquare that we use that is reporting is to run as analytics is to change. So that reporting your numbers, yes, that's what you need to do to comply with the legislation, but if you actually want to tackle this issue, you need to actually understand what's driving it. And what's so good about this dual approach between A&L Goodbody and Gapsquare is that A&L Goodbody really advise on the risk, and the risk associated with the legislation and the impact that that has. Yet at the same time, you get that equality assurance that you've done your number crunching correctly.
Based on your experiences advising UK employers in the past 2 reporting years, what top tips do you have for Irish employers?
I would say, number one, get ahead of the game. You need to get on top of your numbers so that you know in advance what to expect before the legislation comes into force. 2, have a continuous integrated approach. So by looking at your numbers on a regular basis, you will be able to plan better. You'll be able to look at what the drivers are and take much better action on how you're narrowing the gap and how you're actually seeing if the impact that you have is having an effect. Number 3, you really need to understand your numbers. Going beyond those headline figures will really help to understand what are your drivers, what are your root causes of the issue. And number 4, use your data to really empower your action plan and empower the strategic decision making you have within your organisation to create long-term change. And number 5, be a leader, I guess. You want to really drive this agenda and empower your organisation to take a leading stance on equality and diversity.